Thank you for such an engaging speech, Katre. It was truly a pleasure to listen to. We've made it to our final speaker of the night. This talk will explore why external help isn't always enough and how finding an anchor, a source of strength and stability, can foster true resilience. Last, but certainly not least, please welcome Aryan Ravuri from grade 12 of Oak Ridge International School and his talk on anchors in a storm and navigating teen anxiety.
I'd like to start off with a question. Have you ever been haunted by a voice when you're trying to sleep? It's like all you want to do is go to bed, right? But the voice inside says, nah, let's actually remember every awkward moment you've had since kindergarten. We've all heard that voice before. That voice that doesn't let you act on your multi-million-dollar ideas. That voice that reminds you of all your shortcomings. That voice that says that you're not enough, that you'll never be enough. I first heard that voice when I was 14, and it's never left me since. It started in the first week of high school. I already learned the art of being invisible, of how to slide my eyes, glance sideways whenever a teacher asked me a question. Why? Because the voice inside believed I was not capable at all to answer those questions, that I couldn't do it whatsoever. How do you think the next 4 years of my life went? The voice got louder. It got more persistent. From simply glancing sideways, I started to lose all sense of self-worth. I started to become anxious, being afraid to talk to anybody around me. Everybody hated me. That's what I thought. No matter what I could do, the voice wouldn't go away. I'd spent hours binging social media, watching Netflix shows, all to just escape my brain for one moment, to get some relief from the voice that was inside me. However, the moment I stopped, it came back on. When that didn't work, I did the most logical step. I went and talked to my parents. I went and talked to my friends. I explained the problem that I had to everybody, the issues that I was going through, the struggles. They really helped a little bit. Their kind words, their appreciation, it may have made me feel better in the moment. However, it still couldn't defeat the voice. The voice was too persistent, too loud. I don't want to talk about this sometimes. It does really scare me. But sadly, I'm not the only person who's gone through this. The WHO reports that 1 in 7 teenagers struggle from anxiety or depression-related disorders. That very well means that some of you in the crowd right now may be suffering from that same voice, may be having that same internal battle. I believe the voice can be categorized into 2 cycles, the vicious cycle and the virtuous cycle. Let's start talking about the vicious cycle, shall we? Let's go back to another common memory I'm sure most of us must have had. You remember the day of the test, right? You're sitting down with all your friends, remembering every question that's possible, going over past papers, and instead of feeling confident for the test, instead inside you're scared, you're trembling. You're remembering every time you messed up your questions, every time you got it wrong, it never got it right. I'd like to call that a triggering moment. A situation that sparks those feelings of shame, of self-doubt, takes away your confidence, seeps at it, unending. And what that leads to? That leads to negative self-talk, of course. The voice inside just gets this much louder. It may not act like much, but this cycle constantly continues for people. The lucky thing is that for most people, right, they can break out of this cycle. They can recognize when they have these negative thoughts, when they're catching themselves, feel like when they're saying that I'm not smart enough, I'll never succeed. They can catch themselves in that act and completely remember the times they've won to break themselves out of it. But for those suffering with anxiety, depression, low self-worth like I did, it doesn't stop there. It goes much deeper. Slowly, you start to eliminate yourself from the equation. You don't feel like yourself anymore, even though to everybody else, you are there. You start missing out on opportunities. You start feeling scared. You don't open yourself up to anybody in fear of what may happen, in fear of not potentially going out of the vicious cycle, which is ironic. When that happens, it reinforces the negative beliefs in you. You really start to believe the voice. Its whims and fancy become your one singular truth. And over time, that just leads to deeper insecurity, further and further. You start to spiral downwards with no sign of return. Now, the story doesn't end there, right? External support is available for everybody. I mean, what have we been saying recently in mental health awareness? Let's get therapy. Let's go talk about it to people. Let's get people to support us through this. Now, what does that do? That brings us from the vicious cycle into the virtuous cycle. Now, it starts off a similar way. The virtuous cycle essentially mirrors the vicious cycle, right? There's a triggering moment, a moment that doesn't have to be external, but can be internal too, where you feel a sense of confidence, a sense that you actually have things figured out, that you don't have to be afraid of things. And instead of having negative self-talk, the voice instead becomes your ally, your companion. It sticks with you. It brings you up during those down times, reminds you of all the small wins that you've had, and brings you up again. It starts to build confidence within you. It gets rid of that fear. The shame in you turns into courage. That self-doubt turns into self-love. And we begin rewriting our narrative. We begin going away from the vicious cycle to the virtuous cycle. Most of the times, people just gain therapy or speak to others, and they start to realize it themselves. But however, sometimes it's not possible. Not when the voice is too loud, too persistent. You start to fall back into the vicious cycle. Now, I'd like to give an example that highlights these two cycles. Do you all remember that one moment from Into the Spider-Verse? You know, that leap of faith when Miles jumped off, hoping to become Spider-Man. Initially, he starts flailing, going around, losing control of himself. He doesn't know what might happen. He's falling. He constantly finds himself in the vicious cycle with no sign of recovery. But suddenly, he takes that triggering moment of negativity and turns it into his internal triggering moment of the virtuous cycle. He starts to develop confidence, come out of it, and start to rise. With a simple flip of the camera, the director is able to show how you go from the vicious cycle to the virtuous cycle. Now, again, like I said before, it's still not possible with the help of therapy and friends sometimes when the voice is too persistent and too scary and too hard to handle. Sometimes you don't know what to do. You can't open up to anybody. You're just stuck in the room, not being able to do anything, crying. What do you do then? That's where I'd like to introduce the concept of anchors. You know, you want something that's personal. You want something that's customizable, something that can get you out of the virtuous cycle, and something you know like the back of your hand. That's what I believe anchors are. Anchors can be moments. Anchors can be objects. They can be people. They can be anything you really want it to be. For example, how in one of the earlier talks, Pranav, right? His anchor was the moment where he saw his mother smile. That's why he got over his vicious cycle and went on towards doing the play. So, how do you find anchors? That's the funny thing. You can't just pick and choose one for yourself. You can't just say, this is my anchor. I'm going to stick with it, and it's going to continue on. You choose anchors by finding them, and that's a journey in and of itself. How? Well, there's several methods to find anchors, to go out of the vicious cycle and into the virtuous one. And I'd like to share a couple that I've had, the ones that I've used. And they've mainly revolved around self-reflection, right? So, the first one, I'm scared all the time. So, I tried remembering the moments where I wasn't scared, I wasn't anxious, where my knees weren't trembling exactly, and I felt confident in myself, I felt happy. And I found that all those moments were tied to music. You see, for those who know me personally, they know that I carry my earphones wherever I go. No matter what, I consider it an essential. Why, you may ask? When the doubt and anxiety creep in, when I really start to feel scared, I just hit play on one of my playlists on repeat so that I can actually get over it, so I don't have to feel scared anymore. It's funny how drowning your brain out with one noise can take out the voice within, isn't it? Now, self-reflection doesn't just stop there, however. You can self-reflect on the things that made you feel happy as a child and repurpose them into other anchors. For example, for those who know me again, I used to love cookies when I was a kid. I used to eat all types of biscuits. Just ask my parents, they'll know about it. Now, I used to be really fond of the cookie jar. But now, instead of having sweet treats now, they instead have small slips of paper. What are in those small slips of paper, you may ask? Moments where I won, whether it be small, big, anything whatsoever. Why though? As I said before, I have a low sense of self-worth. Oftentimes I don't believe that I'm enough, that I'll never be enough for most people. In fact, I tried applying to TEDx twice before, and I was scared each time. My sense of low self-worth came in the way of me actually getting over here, I managed to sabotage myself at the last second. With the cookie jar, I'm able to place every small win that I've had, right? And that just helps me remember. Remember that the voice inside isn't correct, that I can prove it wrong, that I can be someone completely different, that I can rewrite my narrative. We all have our journeys of finding anchors. It may not be easy at times. In fact, it's very tedious. It took me the span of 4 years to find 2 anchors, 2 only, when most others would have multiple more. But trust me, this journey that you take, the journey that you take to find some self-peace, find something that grounds you when everything gets too loud, it matters. Why? Because that one single moment of peace, that one single moment can get you back to your consciousness and take the fight to the voice itself. It can help you rewrite your narrative. We all fight our battles. We all have our internal battles. We all have our external battles. And they all matter to those around us, be it ourselves, our loved ones, our friends. I'd like to remind you that we don't have to just find our anchors ourselves. We can also be anchors. For example, when I was going through my struggle, I can't remember the amount of times I went and called my friends up, wailed for hours and hours about the issues I was going through, how I felt there was no escape, all to feel a sense of comfort. Talking to others actually managed to ground me, to give me a sense of relief, to give me that one moment where I could actually realize that the voice in my head was not true, that I could take the fight back to it. I'd like to end this off by saying, please, be the anchors to someone else. Because if you can give someone else your strength, if you know that somebody else is there, you can give you yourself the strength to actually overcome the battles that you're going through. I'd like to end off on this note. Be kind. Be patient to others. Be kind to your friends. Be kind to your family. Help them find their support structures, anything that can give them a sense of relief, because you never know the internal battle they're going through. Be their anchor if it's possible. Let's be there for one another. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.